everyone. Welcome back to Golden Throne Radio, a show where we drag ancient kings into a modern room and ask them what they were doing. So, I'm your host, Max, and today we're with a very special guest, one who has one of the craziest resumes in the Hebrew Bible, and of course, that is King Solomon. So, son of David and ruler of Israel's so-called Golden Age. So, Solomon, welcome to Golden Throne Radio.
Thank you. This is not the throne room I'm used to, but it'll do for today.
So today's episode will be called Solomon Unhinged. So before we kind of get into the heavy stuff, kind of basic intro questions, what were you doing before I brought you into this room?
Well, I'm in the later years of my life, old enough to feel the weight of my decisions, but not so old to have forgotten them. But inside my own story, I'm at the point where I'm starting to look back and ask, what has it cost? My people, my faith, and my own heart.
Yeah. So we kind of caught you right after the peak of your reign where everything looks impressive, but the cracks, they start to show. So kind of that's where we want you. So you weren't just the wise king highlight reel. So we're going to kind of open the texts of Deuteronomy, 1 Samuel, 1 Kings, and I'm going to read some lines out loud and kind of have you talk through what you were doing and what you were thinking and where you think you maybe went off track, and especially what it felt like for people living under your life. A little surprise later on. So, all right. So let's start with one of your best moments. So I got my Bible here, actually, and we're going to open to 1 Kings 3. So God appears to you in a dream and asks, what shall I give you? And instead of asking for a long life of riches, in verse 9, you say, given your servant an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. So that's definitely a strong answer. So was that kind of what you wanted most, or just the version that made it onto the page?
No, that was really it. When I took the throne, I felt the weight of it. My father, David, he was a war hero, and I knew I wasn't going to be him. But we had a united kingdom, and we had some rivals of other kingdoms, and a God who expected justice. I knew my judgments were, crooked. Everything else, would have fallen apart. So when I was told to ask for discernment, it was for survival.
All right. Makes sense. So right after that, we go into the famous court case. So I'm going to stay in 1 Kings 3. So around verse 25, the king said, divide the living boy in two. So 2 women are fighting over a baby, each claiming that he's hers. So you call for the sword, and in verse 25, you divide the living child in 2 and give half to the one and half to the other. So I guess everyone kind of freaks out. The real mother begs you to spare the child, and you give the baby to her. So looking back, did you see that as genius or just super extra?
That moment was definitely intense, but I feel like I did what I needed to do. That wasn't just about one child. It was about everybody in my kingdom, my whole court watching me and see how I handled this situation. It was an emotional case, of course, but it kind of forced the truth, and people were walking away saying that, this king can see through lies.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense, but we're going to move on to the next thing, so the building of the temple. So I'm going to flip to 1 Kings 5 and 6, and here you make an agreement with Hiram of Tyre, and you bring in cedar and stone, and you build what becomes the central place of worship. So the text kind of spends a whole entire chapter just describing the layout and decorations of this place. So based on that, what did this temple actually mean to you?
The temple meant everything. It meant we were finally rooted with God.
Yeah.
Before the temple, God's presence was in this tent that was constantly being transitioned to other places.
That's great.
And my father wanted to build a temple for the Lord, but that weight fell on me, and I knew that's something that I wanted to complete. And to me, the temple meant it was, God dwells here. He dwells in this kingdom. And so one place of worship, was huge.
All right. So That's great. Early career Solomon looks pretty ideal to me. You ask for wisdom, you render sharp judgments, you build a temple for God, and you preside over peace and prosperity. So if we freeze the story here, your reign kind of looks like you're following the blueprint to be a perfect king.
Yeah, it does, and I don't mind if people kind of linger on that part of my story.
Yeah, but not on this show. We're gonna keep going. Turn a few more pages. So now I kind of want to read you something that was written before your time. I don't know if you've heard of it, but this kind of hangs over your story like a print, like a contract. So right now I'm in Deuteronomy 17, and right here it's talking about future kings. And verse 16 says, "Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses." Right after that, in verse 17, it says, "And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, let his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive gold and silver." Continuing on, it says, so in summary, not too many horses, especially not from Egypt, not many wives, definitely. We'll get to that one later. And not excessive gold or silver. So I want you to keep that in mind. Okay. And then I'm going to return to 1 Kings 10, verse 14 says, "Now the weight of gold that came onto Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold." It goes on about gold shields, gold cups, an ivory throne overlaid with gold. And then in verses 26 and 28, it says you had chariots and horses, and that your horses were imported from Egypt. And in 1 Kings 16, it says he had 700 wives, princesses, 3 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. So that's kind of weird. We have Deuteronomy saying don't do these 3 things, and then 1 King saying Solomon did all 3 of them. So I want to see what your reaction is on all those side by side.
Well, when you line it up like that, it sounds pretty terrible.
Okay.
And I did know those laws. But when you're actually sitting on the throne or in that real life situation, these, don't come up to you labeled as, is this a Deuteronomy violation or not? They come as, do we survive or not? Horses and chariots meant military power and safety for my kingdom. Gold kept the army funded and other people funded. And the marriages kept neighboring kings from becoming enemies. So that was kind of a political standpoint from that.
Yeah.
In my head, I was doing what was right for my people and protecting my kingdom, not trying to rewrite these rules.
Okay. So I guess maybe it would make more sense to zoom in on each of these. So let's start with the horses and Egypt. So if I remember correctly, in Deuteronomy it says don't acquire many horses and definitely don't send people back to Egypt to get them. And 1 Kings 10 says you imported horses and chariots from Egypt and elsewhere. So you grew up with the Exodus story. So did this kind of linger and register?
Yeah, I knew that story well, but Egypt was still existent, and they controlled trade routes, and they were very influenced in our region. I refused to. If I refused to deal with them, we'd be in isolation. So it was kind of something that I looked at is that we needed to do. I knew that I didn't want to become another pharaoh or, never buy a horse from Egypt ever, but could I have limited it more? Yes. I won't pretend every chariot was essential, but I just felt that military power was very important to my kingdom.
All right. Okay. So I guess next we're going to go to gold. So it says you've got 666 talents of gold in a year, an insane throne, and so much wealth that silver basically just meant nothing. So did this kind of ever cross your mind that it wasn't just a stable kingdom territory? Like you weren't there, but it was excessive territory?
Near the end, yes. Excess kind of snuck up on me.
Yeah.
It starts with we need these funds for projects or defense, like building the temple or military power. Then it goes to the next thing of we need to look at protecting or supporting other nations. And then all of a sudden everybody has, all this gold, and it makes it seem like the scale is tipped in one person's favor. Was it about, image or pride or wealth? No, it wasn't. It was just kind of something that happened, and it didn't mean to work out that way.
Okay, I could buy that. But I guess this next one, we're going to talk about the wives. So Deuteronomy says, he shall not acquire many wives, lest his heart turn away. And in 1 Kings 11, it says very plainly that your wives turn your heart away from other gods. So what were these marriages about? Was it mostly politics, or did you just kind of have a serious boundary problem, man?
These marriages were strictly politics. Every royal marriage connected to Israel meant that there was less chance of a war.
Yeah.
If it was Egypt or Moab or Ammon, it meant that there was more protection from other kingdoms to attack us.
Okay.
But politics obviously doesn't stay clean. Each wife brought her own gods, her own customs, her festivals, and building an altar for her or another for peace. It didn't feel like betrayal then, but now it definitely does. And obviously over time, those small concessions kind of shaped my habits, and my habits obviously shaped my heart. And Deuteronomy did warn about that.
It did, yeah.
And I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong.
So what you're saying is kind of that your goal was to secure the kingdom, but because you got a little carried away and you drifted into exactly what it warned against.
Yeah, I can't pretend otherwise.
All right. So, good. So we have your perspective on the throne, and I want to bring in someone from the ground level. So I believe we have a caller on the line. So let's see. Let's see if this caller. Hello?
Hello?
Hello. So we got a caller on the line. So tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, hey, my name's Mika. I'm from the Northern Tribes, and I spent a lot of time in the cruise building, all those great work Solomon keeps talking about.
All right. So thanks for calling in, Mika. We've heard Solomon explain his choices as necessary for security and worship. So I guess from where you stood, what did his reign feel like?
Felt like work. A lot of work. Everyone talks about the temple and the glory and the visitors from faraway places. I remember being drafted into labor gangs. I
Yeah.
remember long rotations away from my home to cut timber and haul stone. I remember taxes. When Solomon's sons took over, we went to him and said, "This is 1 Kings 12:4. I've got it here. Your
Yeah.
father made our yoke heavy. Now, therefore, lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you." That's exactly how it felt. Heavy yoke.
All right.
Well, under that same reign, you had peace, prosperity, and a temple you could worship. It wasn't just pain.
Sure, but it wasn't equal. You got the throne and foreign praise. We got the hard service part of that verse. The thing is, we were told that this would happen. If I flip back a bit, 1 Samuel 8, Samuel warned us what kings would do. Here in verse 11 and following, he says, "A king will take your sons for his chariots, take your daughters to work, take the best of your fields and vineyards, take a tenth of your grain and flocks, and that you'll end up crying out because of the king you chose." Listening to that now, it sounds like he read your reign in advance.
So I guess what you're basically saying is that Solomon didn't just happen. He's the embodiment of that warning.
Yeah, exactly. He can talk about security and alliances all day. From the side, it looked like Samuel's speech turned to real life, a king taking and taking, as we finally said, "Enough."
You think I didn't care about people like you? Without strong defenses and alliances, we could have been crushed between larger empires.
I'm not saying that you didn't care. I'm saying that you pushed it too far. Strength is one thing. But when the people under you are saying our yoke is heavy, that's a sign something's off. You don't get a split kingdom in 1 Kings 12 because everything was fine. We didn't walk out because we were bored.
So Micah, if we had to sum up Solomon's reign in one line from your side, I guess what would it be?
I'd say it looked like a golden age Samuel's warning from everywhere else.
Yeah. So, I guess Solomon, anything you want to say to Micah before we let him go?
Micah, I won't argue with your experience. I personally believed that I was securing my kingdom. I also know enjoyed the power and the glory. I should have paid more attention to the weight I was putting on people like you, not just to the shine of the projects with my name attached to it.
That's all I wanted to hear.
Well, thanks, Micah. So, thanks for calling in and giving us a real ground level view.
Yeah. Maybe next time someone says we need a king, they'll think twice.
Well, thanks, Micah. Bye.
Yeah.
So, I guess if we zoom out and look at these texts together, I guess Micah had it right. Deuteronomy 17 says, here's how to keep a king from going off the rails. Limit horses, limit wives, and silver and gold. And if we keep him in that, he'll be grounded with the law. And 1 Samuel 8 says, if you pick the king, he's going to take it, and he's going to take and take until you cry out, I guess. And 1 Kings showed your reign starting with wisdom and temple building, then drifting into dividing loyalty, heavy burdens, and the kingdom that quite literally splits in 1 Kings 12. So when you look back over that arc in total, what hits you the most now?
That wisdom moment was never meant to be just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I asked right in the beginning, and I did some things well.
Okay.
But as I continued trusting my position and myself on this throne, I kind of got a little loose with the boundaries. And every now and then I would tell myself, oh, this is for God or this is for the people, when it was clearly just for my own good. And I regret ignoring those signs, the burdens that I put on people, the complaints, until it's too late to kind of change my story.
Okay, so I just have one last line I want to read to you. And that's back in 1 Kings chapter 11:11. So after your heart turns away, the Lord says, since this has been your practice and you have not kept my covenant and statutes, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. So this is the exact turning point. The tearing, I guess, doesn't happen in your lifetime, but it hits your son, and everything after is just as more fragile. So do you see yourself more as a hero who just slipped, or was this a warning about what power can do?
I see myself as both of those things. I was given an incredible opportunity,
Yeah.
but I also made choices that contradicted the very wisdom that I had asked for. If my story is going to be remembered, honestly, with glory and the failure, so it can serve as a warning without erasing the good parts.
Okay. But I would put it a little differently. So you're the best case scenario for a king. A man who's given wisdom, peace, resources, and still you ignored the limits in Deuteronomy and the ones in Samuel, and things just didn't work out. Your reign shows that religious successes, military strength, and national pride just doesn't guarantee faithfulness or justice in a time like this. So it kind of raises a question for my time, and not just yours. So when leaders talk about security and glory, so who's actually carrying this yoke, you know? But yeah, Solomon, thanks for coming into Golden Throne Radio and being able to sit through and talk about some of these uncomfortable parts.
Thank you. And to kind of finish it off, if my story helps people ask better questions about power and responsibility, I feel like that is more important than gold and is a better legacy to hold.
Yeah. Well, all right, Solomon, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you're listening to Golden Throne Radio. Goodbye.